She spent her whole life saying yes. Yes to her daughter, yes to her husband, yes to the sacrifices no one ever saw. She never asked for anything in return, never sought recognition. When she was let go from the grocery store where she'd worked for 22 years, she came home ashamed. And still, she made her daughter's favorite dinner, just like she had since she was a little girl. That night, when she asked for help with the rent, she heard something that cut through her like a knife. Something unforgettable, something no mother should ever hear. But fate, unforgiving and full of surprises, decided it was time for her daughter to learn what absence really feels like. The sun was low in the sky when she got off the bus at the corner of Grove Street and Market in Paterson, New Jersey. She was carrying a bag with 2 packs of rice, a frozen chicken, and a little box of strawberries on sale. The worn coat she had on wasn't nearly warm enough for late March, and the wind sliced across her face like a blade. Even so, she walked with steady steps, her head held high. It was Friday, and she liked to make something special for dinner for Amanda, her daughter, who at 27 still lived with her. She climbed the stairs of their 2-story house carefully, not wanting to make noise. Amanda liked to sleep in on her days off. The kitchen smelled like the past. Same beige tiles from the 90s, same old black coffee maker, same scratched-up pots from years of use. She set the chicken in the sink to thaw, turned on her old radio to the jazz station she loved, and started peeling onions. That's how she relaxed, cooking for the people she loved. She felt that even if the world outside ignored her, in that kitchen, she still mattered. She was still useful, still valuable. When Amanda came down the stairs around noon, complaining about her back and the noise she pretended not to hear, she smiled, pointed to the carefully set table and said, "We're having herb-roasted chicken tonight, just the way you like it." Amanda rolled her eyes and mumbled something about not being hungry. That was nothing new. Amanda had been bitter for months, taking out her frustrations on her without ever explaining why. But she endured it. She always had. After lunch, they sat on the couch. She tried to bring up the layoff, but Amanda didn't even look up from her phone. When she finally gathered the courage, she whispered, "Today was my last day at the store." Amanda looked up, surprised. "What do you mean? Why?" She hesitated, took a deep breath and answered, "They said they're bringing in new people. Younger. Faster." Amanda let out a dry laugh. "Mom, you're 58. You can't expect them to keep you around forever." It wasn't what she'd hoped to hear, but she didn't show it. She just lowered her eyes and folded her hands in her lap. That night, while she washed the dishes alone, she thought about what to do next. Unemployment would barely cover anything, and the rent was already late. Amanda made enough to help if she wanted to, but she never offered. She preferred to spend on takeout, new clothes, nights out with her friends. 2 days later, with the power about to be shut off, she found the courage to ask for help. Amanda was heading out to meet someone when she called her in the hallway. "Sweetheart, could you help me with the rent this month? Just until I find something." Amanda stopped, turned with clear annoyance and snapped, without thinking, without filter, without mercy. "You've become a burden, Mom. A burden. I've got my own problems." The silence that followed was so thick it felt like it swallowed the whole house. She didn't cry, didn't reply. She just walked into her room and gently closed the door, as if even then, she didn't want to be a bother. That night, she didn't eat dinner, didn't turn on the radio. She just sat on the bed staring at the wall. She remembered little Amanda, crying because she was afraid of the dark. She remembered holding her hand until she fell asleep. She remembered all the double shifts, all the sleepless nights she worked to buy her daughter's first laptop. She remembered everything she'd given up, and she remembered how, in the end, the person she loved the most called her a burden. The next morning, before the sun even rose, she left the house, walked down to Main Street past the public library, and into St. John's Church. She sat in one of the empty pews, her hands trembling, and there, in that sacred silence, she let herself cry. Not loudly, not for long, just enough to ease the weight in her chest. When she walked out, she knew something had to change. If Amanda couldn't see her worth, she'd have to rediscover it on her own. For the first time in decades, she put herself first. But fate already had something in store, something that would shake Amanda's world to its core, something that would make her see her mother not as a burden, but as an anchor, a pillar, and in the end, her salvation. That afternoon, While Amanda slept in after a night out in Hoboken, she spent hours walking around the city. She carried a modest resume printed on paper she'd gotten at the public library. With her coat pulled tight across her chest and her eyes scanning every storefront, she went from shop to shop along Grand Street, gently asking if they were hiring. Some didn't even bother to answer. Others smiled with pity, the kind of pity she despised. That look that says "poor thing" without needing words. No one wanted a woman nearly 60, with aching knees and hands worn from decades at the checkout line and bagging groceries. By nightfall, she returned home with her feet throbbing and her heart shrinking. Amanda was sprawled on the couch laughing on the phone with a friend as if nothing had happened, as if what she'd said 2 days earlier hadn't left a scar. She wasn't expecting an apology. Life had already taught her that expecting too much from others was a recipe for disappointment. But it still hurt. In the days that followed, she stuck to her routine. Up early, out job hunting, back by afternoon, laundry, tidying the kitchen, and then sitting on the front porch at night watching headlights pass. Amanda, on the other hand, seemed more distant than ever. Her phone might as well have been part of her body. They barely spoke. That heavy silence, full of unspoken words, settled between them like an invisible wall. But the following Friday, something shifted. Amanda left the house earlier than usual, rushed, without saying where she was going. She noticed the anxious look on her daughter's face but didn't ask. Deep down, even wounded, she still worried. Hours later, while folding sheets in the bedroom, the landline rang. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. But something inside her, maybe a gut feeling, made her pick up. It was St. Joseph's Hospital across town. The voice on the other end was calm but to the point. Amanda had been in a car accident. Not fatal, but serious enough to require surgery. The ground seemed to give way beneath her. Her legs went weak. For a moment, the house spun. She ran out the door, caught the first bus she saw, and arrived at the hospital with her heart pounding. In the cold white hallway of the 3rd floor, she saw her daughter, really saw her, for the first time in years, as she truly was, fragile, vulnerable, scared. Amanda was crying when she walked into the room, her face bruised, one arm in a sling, eyes lost like a child's. The moment she saw her, she broke down. "Mom." The word came out in a whisper, laced with shame and regret. She walked over, sat by her side, and took her hand without saying a word, squeezed it tight. And in that silent gesture, Amanda understood everything. The woman she'd called a burden was, in truth, the one person who would always be there when everyone else disappeared. In the days that followed, she stayed by Amanda's side in the hospital, fed her with a spoon, fluffed pillows, changed sheets, slept in stiff chairs, ate whatever the cafeteria offered, and never once complained. The doctor, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Goldman, said Amanda's recovery would be long, and she'd need full support. Amanda could barely look at her when he said it. The shame still hung heavy. Then, on the 12th day, after Amanda was discharged and they were back at the house, something changed. Amanda called out to her from the kitchen, her voice low. When she walked in, Amanda was sitting at the table, eyes red. "Mom," she began, "I don't deserve what you're doing for me." She didn't reply, just sat across from her. Then Amanda knelt on the floor in front of her, tears streaming down her face. "I treated you like garbage. I was cruel, selfish. You're not a burden. You're everything I have. Please forgive me. Please." She felt the tears rise but didn't cry. She simply cupped Amanda's face in her hands and said with a softness that carried decades of love, "Get up, sweetheart. Life has a way of teaching us what we need. What matters is that you've learned." But even after that moment of reconciliation, things between them didn't go back to how they were. There was love, yes, but also a certain distance. Amanda seemed restless, like something was bothering her that she couldn't quite name. She spent hours in her room, glued to her laptop. She stopped going out, didn't have friends over anymore. And she, though she never asked, knew this wasn't just about healing from the accident. Something else was coming. Something Amanda still didn't have the courage to say. The following Monday, the silence in the house felt different, heavier. She was making coffee when she noticed Amanda standing in the kitchen doorway, holding a crumpled sheet of paper, her face pale, eyes sunken. That look, half fear, half shame, was all too familiar. Amanda held the paper out without saying a word. With coffee grounds still on her fingers, she took the paper and read it slowly, as if decoding something dangerous. It was a court notice. Amanda owed over $8,000 in credit card debt. Shopping, takeout, clothes, weekend getaways, all piled up. The debt had gone to court, 30 days to settle. If not, she could lose assets, her credit, even face legal action. Her stomach twisted into a knot. This daughter she still saw as a girl now carried a weight she couldn't bear and a fear she couldn't hide. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Amanda slumped into a chair, face in her hands. "Because I knew you'd try to fix it like you always do, and I wanted you to stop having to take care of me." Her voice cracked. "But I messed everything up." She sat beside her in silence for a while. There was no room left for blame, only for action, and somehow she knew she'd have to find a way. That night, after Amanda fell asleep, she pulled out an old notebook and started writing down numbers, the unemployment checks, the few bills saved in a tin in the laundry room, the rent, the electric bill, the debt, the medications Amanda now needed. She did the math 3 times. The numbers never added up. It was like trying to fill a bucket full of holes, and still, giving up never crossed her mind. The next morning, she went back to the public library and used a computer to look for jobs that accepted people over 50. Most listings were vague, poorly paid, physically demanding, things she wasn't sure her body could handle anymore. But she wrote them all down anyway. She also stopped by the church where she sometimes cleaned in exchange for food baskets. She spoke to Carol, the coordinator, who promised to help. "You've got faith," Carol said. "And when you've got faith, you don't fall. You kneel so you can rise." At the end of the week, a small opportunity came through. Nighttime cleaning in an office building in downtown Newark, 3 nights a week, from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. It didn't pay much, but it was under the table and required no experience. She accepted without hesitation. She started the following Monday. Dressed in a gray uniform that made her sweat, she hauled buckets and scrubbed floors beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. She got home close to 3 a.m., slept 4 hours, then got up to care for Amanda, who still couldn't be on her feet for long. Amanda, for her part, began to change. The arrogance faded. She started watching her mother in silence, as if seeing a familiar place with new eyes. One day, while her mother was brushing her gray hair in the hallway mirror, Amanda appeared with an envelope. "Mom, I sold my handbags. The expensive ones. The ones I didn't need." Inside the envelope, about $200. "It's not much, but it's everything I could manage." She looked at her through the mirror without turning around. "You didn't have to do that." Amanda, her eyes brimming, replied, "Yes, I did. I need to learn. I need to be more like you." They started sharing responsibilities. Amanda helped however she could, even with her arm still in a sling. Together they made simple dinners. They started talking again, not about the past, but about small dreams. One night, Amanda said, "Do you remember that restaurant in Cape May? The one you always said you wanted to go to someday?" She smiled, surprised that Amanda remembered. "I do. It was just a silly dream." Amanda didn't hesitate. "We're going. One day, I'll take you there." But the peace didn't last long. 2 weeks later, she received a letter with the seal of the Passaic County Small Claims Court. A hearing had been scheduled for Amanda's debt. She would have to appear in person. The fear came rushing back. In the days leading up to the hearing, Amanda had anxiety attacks. She lost her appetite, cried quietly at night, and she, despite the exhaustion, remained steady. She made chamomile tea, sat beside her during the worst moments, whispered words of courage. "This isn't the end of the world. We'll face it. Together." On the morning of the hearing, they were both up before dawn. Amanda wore a simple blouse, her hair pulled back. She, in her same worn-out coat, walked beside her daughter like an invisible shield. In the courthouse waiting room, surrounded by strangers and skeptical glances, Amanda squeezed her mother's hand tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She looked her daughter in the eyes and replied with the strength of someone who's loved until it hurt, "I will never give up on you, not even when you give up on yourself." But what awaited them in that courtroom was something neither of them saw coming. A face from the past. A name she hadn't heard in over 20 years. A man reappearing with promises, intentions, and wounds that had never fully healed. She saw his profile first. An older face now, but unmistakable. He was sitting 2 rows ahead wearing a cheap dark suit, a worn leather briefcase resting on his lap. When he turned his head, their eyes met, and for 1 second, time froze. Her heart skipped, not from nostalgia, but from instinct, alarm. Amanda noticed her mother tense and whispered, "Is everything okay?" She didn't answer. She just looked back at the man and knew without a doubt. It was Rick Coleman, Amanda's father. He had left when Amanda was only 7, a Saturday afternoon, said he needed to figure life out and walked away with a backpack. He never came back, never called, never sent a birthday card. More than 20 years went by with not a single word. She'd cried through countless nights, trying to explain to Amanda that he just needed time, until eventually, she realized his time no longer included either of them. And now, here he was, sitting in a courtroom, as if the past held no weight. Before she could react, the clerk called Amanda's name. They stood. She squeezed her daughter's hand tightly. As they walked past the row of chairs, Rick stood too. Amanda stopped, looked at him, confused. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. He nodded with a timid smile. "Hi, Mandy." The world moved in slow motion. She gripped Amanda's arm. "Not now, later." Amanda, dazed, obeyed. During the hearing, Amanda explained everything, how she'd already sold possessions, started a payment plan, and was committed to fulfilling her obligations. The judge, a stern man with silver hair, acknowledged her efforts and granted a fair agreement. They left the room relieved, but the heavier burden waited just outside. Rick stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, expression unsure. Amanda hesitated. "Why is he here? How did he find me?" She answered, voice steady. "Because court debt becomes public record, and because the kind of man who disappears and never looks back usually only shows up again when life gets hard." Rick approached slowly. "I just want to talk. Just a coffee." Amanda looked torn, anger and curiosity pulling her in opposite directions. "You vanished. For years. Not even a card on my birthday. Nothing. Why now?" He sighed. "Because I was a fool, a coward. But I want to make things right." She said nothing, then looked at her mother, who remained silent. Amanda finally said, "If my mom wants to talk to you, maybe I'll listen too. But if she says no, you turn around and never come back." He looked at her mother with a flicker of respect. "May I?" he asked. She took a breath. 5 minutes. At the cafe on the corner. Amanda stayed outside while they sat at a worn Formica table in Liberty Coffee, on the corner of Hamilton and Summer Street. He ordered tea. She didn't want anything. "I'm not here for pity or anything like that," he said. "I'm sick. Don't have much time." She looked him in the eyes. There was no polished remorse, but there was truth, tired and raw. "Then why come to me?" He hesitated. "Because I want to leave something for Mandy. I have a small life insurance policy. It's enough to cover her debt, maybe a bit more. I just need her to agree to be the beneficiary." She bit her lip. "And you think money fixes what you broke?" He shook his head. "No, but maybe it eases the weight." Deep down, she knew Amanda could use some relief. And as broken as Rick was, maybe this was his final attempt to do something right. "I'll talk to her, but you only see my daughter again if it's to help her. And then, you disappear again. No resentment. Just go." Rick nodded, his eyes glassy. "Thank you." She walked out of the cafe with steady steps, told Amanda everything on the way home. Her daughter listened in silence. Once they got home, Amanda went straight to her room. She stayed there for hours. When she finally emerged, she sat beside her mother on the bed. "If he dies tomorrow, I don't know if I'll cry. But if that money helps clean up some of what he left behind, I'll accept it. Not for him, for me, for you." In the days that followed, Amanda signed the paperwork. Rick didn't reach out again. A week later, a notice came from the bank. The insurance had been approved. It covered her debt, paid a month's rent in advance, and there was still some left over. Amanda used part of it to clear what she owed. With the rest, she bought 2 bus tickets to Cape May. "We deserve this," she said with a shy smile. And for the first time in a long while, her mother felt a flicker of hope. But as the 2 of them packed their bags for the short trip, a phone call changed everything. It was St. Joseph's Hospital again. But this time, it wasn't about Amanda. It was about her. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm, almost mechanical, the kind of tone that comes before hard news. She heard her full name spoken aloud, the one no one used, the one that only showed up on overdue bills or medical files. Her chest tightened. "We need you to come back in to repeat some tests. There's been a change in your previous results. It's important that you come as soon as possible." She thanked the voice, hung up, and stared at the phone for a few seconds. Amanda came into the hallway, passport in hand, eyes glowing with excitement. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yes, just a routine call from the hospital." Amanda nodded, unconvinced, but she didn't press. The next morning, she went to the hospital alone. Took the 74 bus to Patterson Station, then walked 3 blocks to the side entrance of St. Joseph's. She had an envelope in her bag with the previous test results, carefully folded between a tissue and the small rosary she'd carried since she was young. She waited over an hour to be seen. The doctor was young, polite, but had that distant manner of someone used to delivering heavy news. "We found some changes in your blood work, elevated liver markers, indicators consistent with carcinoma. It's early to confirm, but we need to investigate urgently." She didn't cry, didn't ask, "Why me?" She just nodded, calm, as if part of her had already known something wasn't right. She left the hospital at dusk, with another round of tests scheduled for the following week. The cold wind bit at her cheeks. On the way home, she passed a small clothing store. In the window, she saw a light blue dress, the kind she always thought was beautiful but never bought. For a moment, she pictured herself wearing it at a seaside dinner in Cape May, sitting across from her daughter eating shrimp and smiling. A simple dream, almost silly, but now, with an invisible clock ticking, it felt urgent. That night, she said nothing to Amanda. She let her daughter talk about the trip, the restaurant reservation, the ocean view room. She listened carefully, memorized every word, like someone who knew time had begun counting backward. When Amanda went to bed, she stayed in the living room, looking through old photos kept in a cardboard box. Photos of baby Amanda, birthday parties, graduation. Photos from a time when loving didn't hurt as much. She cried softly, not from fear, but from grief. Grief for the life she still wanted to live, but maybe couldn't. On Saturday, they left for Cape May. The trip was peaceful. The bus rolled through cold urban landscapes until the horizon opened up to the deep blue of the coast. They arrived mid-afternoon. The hotel was simple but clean and cozy. Amanda led her by the hand to the room, excited. "You're going to love the sunset here, Mom." And she smiled, because for a few hours she wanted to forget about the tests. She just wanted to be there, with her daughter, breathing in the salty air, feeling alive. They had dinner at a waterfront restaurant called The Lobster House, right by the pier. Amanda insisted on ordering wine, even if her mom would only take a sip. "You've always done everything for me. Tonight is for you," she agreed. When the dish arrived, a steaming platter of shrimp and vegetables, her eyes welled up. "Thank you, sweetheart." Amanda took her hand. "No, thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." They spent Sunday strolling around, laughing, taking photos with her old phone. Amanda even gave her a gentle push on a wooden swing by the beach, like their roles had flipped for a moment. It was the lightest weekend they'd shared in years. But when they returned to Patterson, reality was waiting like a shadow. On Tuesday, she went back to the hospital for imaging tests. She didn't want Amanda to know. She said she was going to church. In the doctor's office, the confirmation came. Intermediate stage liver carcinoma. Words like treatable, chemotherapy, and chance of response were spoken. But all she could think about was how to keep it hidden, at least for now. Amanda was still fragile, no matter how strong she tried to act. Telling her now would tear down everything they'd rebuilt. On her way out, she sat on a stone bench in front of the hospital. The wind whipped hard. Trees swayed like they too felt the weight of the news. She closed her eyes and said a short prayer. She didn't ask for a miracle. She asked for time. Time to prepare Amanda. Time to help her daughter learn how to live without her. And above all, time to be remembered with tenderness. Not as a burden, not as a martyr, but simply as a mother. What she didn't know was that Amanda, on her own, had already started to sense something was wrong. And like any daughter who truly loves, she would start digging. And what she'd uncover would change Everything. Amanda began to notice the signs in silence. First, it was her mother's eyes. Deeper, darker, carrying a weight that didn't seem to come from the body, but from the soul. Then, it was the food. The woman who had always eaten with joy now just picked at her plate and waved it off with a quiet, "I'm not really hungry." There were also the little lapses. Keys left in the door, tea forgotten on the stove, mail piling up unopened. Amanda didn't say anything at first. She simply watched, like someone slowly piecing together a puzzle without knowing what the final image would be. One night, while grabbing a coat from her mother's closet, Amanda found a folded envelope tucked between old t-shirts. It was the medical report. In cold, clinical print, the full diagnosis stared back at her. Hepatocellular carcinoma. Intermediate stage. Urgent treatment recommended. She stood there frozen, paper in hand, chest tightening, and a bitter anger rising in her throat. Not anger at her mother, but at the silence, at the way she'd kept it hidden, at the fear that had convinced her she'd be a burden once again. She walked to the living room where her mother was watching an old episode of The Golden Girls for the 1,000th time, sat beside her, laid the envelope in her lap. Why? Her mother didn't answer right away. She just turned off the TV and stared at the wall. Because I wanted you to have peace, even if just for a while. I wanted you to feel strong before knowing. I didn't want us to go back to living in pain. Amanda took her hand. We only got this far because we did it together. Don't shut me out now. Her mother smiled faintly. You've grown up. From that day on, everything changed again. Amanda started going with her to every appointment, learned complicated medical terms, researched chemotherapy, made spreadsheets for medication schedules, bought pretty scarves for the days when the hair would start to fall, and for the first time she took on the role she'd spent years leaving to her mother. It's my turn to take care of you now, she'd say. And she did, with gentleness, with focus, and with a quiet guilt that bled beneath the surface for all the years she'd been blind to her mother's pain. The treatment days were hard, and she bore each one in silence. In the sterile white halls of St. Joseph's, between the scent of antiseptic and the drone of machines, she held her daughter's hand with a kind of faith that wasn't in healing anymore, but in time. Time well spent. Time with Amanda. Time to leave her whole. Ready. At home, Amanda took over the routine. She learned to cook rice the way her mom did, seasoned the chicken with the same herbs, folded the towels the same way. Even the old radio played a little softer, as if it too respected the quiet shift in the house. The roles had flipped. Now Amanda was the one leaving notes. Take your meds at 10. Be right back. Ran to the store. I love you. Her mother read everyone, tucking them away like treasured letters. One rainy April afternoon, Amanda came home early and found her mother at the table, sorting through a cardboard box. Inside, documents, photos, old letters. What's this? She asked. Her mother answered calmly, My life. I want you to know where things are, what matters, what you can throw away. Amanda sat beside her, picked up a photo of the two of them, taken during a picnic in Weasel Brook Park, Clifton. They were both laughing. Amanda was about 8. Life had still been simple then. I threw away so many memories of us, Mom, without even realizing it. Her mother pulled her into a hug. What matters most, you kept. Right here. She pointed to Amanda's chest. The next week, a letter arrived from the hospital. The chemo was having some effect, but the results were still unclear. Treatment would continue, but with stronger doses. Amanda read the letter in silence. Her mother looked at her. If it gets too hard, you tell me. We'll decide together how far we go. Amanda replied without hesitation. We go as far as you want. I'm with you. Always. In the middle of it all, Amanda had an idea. She created an anonymous TikTok account. She began posting short videos, never showing faces, about what it was like to care for a sick mother. She spoke about memories, about the pain, about what she was learning. Thousands of women began to comment. Mothers, daughters, strangers writing things like, You made me call my mom today. She filmed rice simmering on the stove, her mom's new scarf, a book left open on the porch chair, little portraits of what love looks like when time begins to run short. One video went viral, over 3 million views. Messages poured in from across the country, offers of help, Letters, flowers. A restaurant in Cape May even sent a gift voucher with a handwritten note. "Come back when you're well. The table with the view will be waiting." Amanda read it out loud. Her mother smiled. "Looks like we're leaving a trail behind us, huh?" Amanda squeezed her hand. "The world needs to know who you are, Mom. I'm just helping." But amid the joy, a text arrived from the hospital. The latest scans showed no progress. The disease was advancing. Time, that old enemy, was running out. Amanda read the message sitting in the bathroom, on the toilet lid, in silence. She cried quietly, then wiped her eyes, took a deep breath and walked out with a smile that barely held. She didn't say a word. Not yet. But in that moment, she knew. She had to start preparing for the hardest goodbye of her life. The weeks that followed moved like autumn wind, fast, quiet, and full of falling leaves. Every morning, Amanda woke before the alarm, as if her body knew there was no time left to waste. She brewed coffee just the way her mom liked it, did the laundry, whispered psalms while her mother slept in the next room. The illness didn't shout, but it whispered louder every day. Her mother's skin lost its glow. Her bones showed beneath the loose blouses. Her smile, though still there, took longer to come. And her eyes. They looked as if they were already seeing someplace far away. Amanda kept filming little moments. But now, it wasn't for anyone else. It was for her. To save the sound of her mother laughing at something silly. The way she stirred tea 3 times and tapped the spoon on the rim. The way she smoothed the quilt before lying down. Things that, without meaning to, become relics when absence knocks at the door. One late afternoon, Amanda suggested a short outing. They sat on the porch bundled in blankets, hot chocolate in their hands. The sky was painted in orange and lilac. It was just a regular day. Quiet. Beautiful. Her mother turned to her, voice raspier now, and said, "When you were born, I was terrified I wouldn't be enough. But the second I held you, I knew. I'd protect you from everything. And if there came a day I couldn't, I'd leave you strong enough to protect yourself." Amanda, eyes brimming, held her mother's hand. "You taught me everything that matters. You just didn't teach me how to live without you." Night came slowly, and with it, a low-grade fever. The next day her mother didn't want to get out of bed. Amanda stayed by her side, changing cool cloths, giving small sips of water, fluffing pillows. Her mother mumbled fragments, mixed memories, names Amanda didn't recognize. For the first time, Amanda saw the full fragility of the woman who had always been her shield. The home care doctor came and confirmed what she already felt in her gut. Days, maybe a week, maybe less. That night, Amanda pulled out one of her mother's old notebooks, full of recipes and scribbled thoughts, and began writing a letter. She sat beside the bed. "Mom, I know you're tired, I get it. And it's okay if you want to rest now, but before you go, let me say something." She took her mother's hand, already cold at the fingertips. "You were never a burden. You were roots. You were my ground. My shelter. The reason I didn't fall apart. If I am anything today, it's because you never gave up on me. I love you, and I'll love you long after the end." Her mother opened her eyes slowly. There was still a soft glow there. She couldn't speak, but a single tear rolled down. Amanda wiped it with the back of her hand and smiled through her own. "It's all okay now, all right? I'm going to be okay. I promise." In the early hours of Wednesday morning, while Amanda dozed with her head resting on the edge of the bed, she slipped away. No struggle, no pain. Peaceful. As if she knew, at last, her daughter was ready. Amanda woke to silence. And she knew. The days that followed were a fog of goodbyes, phone calls, paperwork, and the funeral. But even in mourning, there was a strange sense of peace. Neighbors brought flowers. Church friends came with casseroles, hugs, stories. A woman Amanda had never seen showed up at the door, eyes red. "I follow your account. I just wanted to say, your mother changed how I see mine." Amanda heard it like a confirmation. Her mother hadn't left in vain. She'd left a trail, roots, a good kind of scar. A few days later, Amanda returned to the stone bench in front of St. Joseph's. She sat with a cup of coffee and her mother's notebook in her lap. She read the final page aloud, the writing shaky. "If one day I leave before you're ready, look for me in the little things, in the sound of the kettle, in the smell of onions frying. I'll be there." She closed her eyes, and for the first time since her mother's passing, she felt her, present, light, and most of all, alive in what really matters, in the way Amanda now loved the world, with tenderness, with patience, with courage. In the months that followed, Amanda transformed the house, painted the walls, donated old clothes. She started a small homemade meal business. She named it after what her mom always said she'd call her dream restaurant, Warm Soul. Every Sunday she made a special dish in her honor, and every customer took home a piece of the story of a woman who had once been silenced, overlooked, even called a burden, but who in the end had been the foundation of everything. And even when no one was looking, Amanda still whispered, "Thank you, Mom. I'm still here, living just like you taught me, strong, with love."